Purépecha. The Purépecha are a group of indigenous people centered in the northwestern region of Michoacán, Mexico, mainly in the area of the cities of Cherán and Pátzcuaro. They are also known by the derogatory term Tarascan, an exonym applied by outsiders and not one they use for themselves. The Purépecha occupied most of Michoacán, but also some of the lower valleys of both Guanajuato and Jalisco, Celaya, Acambaro, Serrano, and Yurirapundaro. Now, the Purépecha live mostly in the highlands of central Michoacán, around Lakes Pátzcuaro and Cuitzeo. The Purépecha civilization emerged around 1000 CE in Mesoamerica. They flourished from 1100 CE to 1530 CE. They continue to live in the state of Michoacán. Fierce warriors, they were never conquered, and in their glory years, successfully sealed off huge areas from Aztec domination. Maya history of the Maya civilization. The history of Maya civilization is divided into three principal periods: the preclassic, classic, and post-classic periods. These were preceded by the Archaic period, which saw the first settled villages and early developments in agriculture. Modern scholars regard these periods as arbitrary divisions of chronology of the Maya civilization, rather than indicative of cultural evolution or decadence. Definitions of the start and end dates of period spans can vary by as much as a century, depending on the author. The pre-classic lasted from approximately 3000 BC to approximately 250 AD. This was followed by the classic from 250 AD to roughly 950 AD, then by the post-classic from 950 AD to the middle of the 16th century. Each period is further subdivided. Maya history spans 3,000 years. The classic Maya may have collapsed due to changing climate in the end of the 10th century. Toltec. The Toltec culture was a pre-Columbian Mesoamerican culture that ruled a state centered in Tula, Hidalgo, Mexico, during the Epiclassic and the early post-classic period of Mesoamerican chronology, reaching prominence from 950 to 1150 CE. The later Aztec culture considered the Toltec to be their intellectual and cultural predecessors, and described Toltec culture emanating from Tolan as the epitome of civilization. In the Nahuatl language, the word Toltecatl, singular, or Tolteca, plural, came to take on the meaning artisan. The Aztec oral and pictographic tradition also described the history of the Toltec Empire, giving lists of rulers and their exploits. Modern scholars debate whether the Aztec narratives of Toltec history should be given credence as descriptions of actual historical events. While all scholars acknowledge that there is a large mythological part of the narrative, some maintain that, by using a critical comparative method, some level of historicity can be salvaged from the sources. Others maintain that continued analysis of the narratives as sources of factual history is futile and hinders access to learning about the culture of Tula. Other controversies relating to the Toltec include the question of how best to understand the reasons behind the perceived similarities in architecture and iconography between the archaeological site of Tula and the Maya site of Chichen Itza. Researchers are yet to reach a consensus in regard to the degree or direction of influence between these two sites. The Toltec were a nomadic people, dating from the 10th-12th century, whose language was also spoken by the Aztecs. Teotihuacan is an ancient Mesoamerican city located in a sub-valley of the Valley of Mexico, which is located in the state of Mexico, 40 kilometers, 25 miles, northeast of modern-day Mexico City. Teotihuacan is known today as the site of many of the most architecturally significant Mesoamerican pyramids built in the pre-Columbian Americas, namely the Pyramid of the Sun and the Pyramid of the Moon. Although close to Mexico City, Teotihuacan was not a Mexican, i.e., Aztec city, and it predates the Aztec Empire by many centuries. At its zenith, perhaps in the first half of the first millennium, 1 CE to 500 CE, Teotihuacan was the largest city in the Americas, with a population of at least 25,000, but has been estimated at 125,000 or more, making it at least the sixth largest city in the world during its epoch. The city covered 8 square miles, 21 kilometers, and 80 to 90% of the total population of the valley resided in Teotihuacan. Apart from the pyramids, Teotihuacan is also anthropologically significant for its complex, multi-family residential compounds, the Avenue of the Dead, and its vibrant, well-preserved murals. Additionally, Teotihuacan exported fine obsidian tools found throughout Mesoamerica. The city is thought to have been established around 100 BCE, with major monuments continuously under construction until about 250 CE. The city may have lasted until sometime between the 7th and 8th centuries CE, but its major monuments were sacked and systematically burned around 550 CE. Its collapse might be related to the extreme weather events of 535–536. Teotihuacan began as a religious center in the Mexican plateau around the 1st century CE. It became the largest and most populated center in the pre-Columbian Americas. Teotihuacan was home to multi-floor apartment compounds built to accommodate the large population. The term Teotihuacan, or Teotihuacano, is also used to refer to the whole civilization and cultural complex associated with the site. Although it is a subject of debate whether Teotihuacan was the center of a state empire, its influence throughout Mesoamerica is well documented. Evidence of Teotihuacano presence is found at numerous sites in Veracruz and the Maya region. The later Aztecs saw these magnificent ruins and claimed a common ancestry with the Teotihuacanos, modifying and adopting aspects of their culture. The ethnicity of the inhabitants of Teotihuacan is the subject of debate. Possible candidates are the Nahua, Otomi, or Totonac ethnic groups. Other scholars have suggested that Teotihuacan was multi-ethnic due to the discovery of cultural aspects connected to the Maya as well as Otopamean people. It is clear that many different cultural groups lived in Teotihuacan during the height of its power, with migrants coming from all over, but especially from Oaxaca and the Gulf Coast. After the collapse of Teotihuacan, central Mexico was dominated by more regional powers, notably Xochicalco and Tula. The city and the archaeological site are located in what is now the San Juan Teotihuacan municipality in the state of Mexico, approximately 40 kilometers, 25 mitsabalis northeast of Mexico City. The site covers a total surface area of 83 square kilometers, 32 sqmi, and was designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1987. It is the most visited archaeological site in Mexico, receiving 4,185,017 visitors in 2017. Teotihuacan, 4th century BCE, 7th–8th century CE, was both a city and an empire of the same name, which, at its zenith between 150 and the 5th century, covered most of Mesoamerica. Aztec. The Aztecs were a Mesoamerican civilization that flourished in central Mexico in the post-classic period, from 1300 to 1521. The Aztec people included different ethnic groups of central Mexico, particularly those groups who spoke the Nahuatl language and who dominated large parts of Mesoamerica from the 14th to the 16th centuries. Aztec culture was organized into city-states, altepetl, some of which joined to form alliances, political confederations, or empires. The Aztec Empire was a confederation of 3 city-states established in 1427. Tenochtitlan, the capital city of the Mexica, or Tenochca, Texcoco, and Tlacopan, previously part of the Tepanec Empire, whose dominant power was Azcapotzalco. Although the term Aztecs is often narrowly restricted to the Mexica of Tenochtitlan, it is also broadly used to refer to Nahua polities, or peoples of central Mexico, in the pre-Hispanic era, as well as the Spanish colonial era, 1521–1821. The definitions of Aztec and Aztecs have long been the topic of scholarly discussion ever since German scientist Alexander von Humboldt established its common usage in the early 19th century. Most ethnic groups of central Mexico in the post-classic period shared essential cultural traits of Mesoamerica. So many of the characteristics that characterize Aztec culture cannot be said to be exclusive to the Aztecs. For the same reason, the notion of Aztec civilization is best understood as a particular horizon of a general Mesoamerican civilization. The culture of central Mexico includes maize cultivation, the social division between nobility, peopletin, and commoners, Macahualtin, a pantheon featuring Tezcatlipoca, Tlaloc, and Quetzalcoatl, and the calendric system of a Shupohwali of 365 days intercalated with a tonal Pohwali of 260 days. Particular to the Mexica of Tenochtitlan was the patron god Huitzilopochtli, twin pyramids, and the ceramic styles known as Aztec 1 to IV. From the 13th century, the Valley of Mexico was the heart of dense population and the rise of city-states. The Mexica were latecomers to the Valley of Mexico, and founded the city-state of Tenochtitlan on unpromising islets in Lake Texcoco, later becoming the dominant power of the Aztec Triple Alliance or Aztec Empire. It was an empire that expanded its political hegemony far beyond the Valley of Mexico, conquering other city-states throughout Mesoamerica in the late post-classic period. It originated in 1427 as an alliance between the city-states Tenochtitlan, Texcoco, and Tlacopan. These allied to defeat the Tepanec state of Azcapotzalco, which had previously dominated the basin of Mexico. Soon, Texcoco and Tlacopan were relegated to junior partnership in the alliance, with Tenochtitlan the dominant power. The empire extended its reach by a combination of trade and military conquest. It was never a true territorial empire controlling territory by large military garrisons in conquered provinces, but rather dominated its client city-states, primarily by installing friendly rulers in conquered territories, constructing marriage alliances between the ruling dynasties, and extending an imperial ideology to its client city-states. Client city-states paid taxes, not tribute to the Aztec emperor, the Huey Tlatoani, in an economic strategy limiting communication and trade between outlying polities, making them dependent on the imperial center for the acquisition of luxury goods. The political clout of the empire reached far south into Mesoamerica, conquering polities as far south as Chiapas and Guatemala, and spanning Mesoamerica from the Pacific to the Atlantic Oceans. The empire reached its maximum extent in 1519, just before the arrival of a small group of Spanish conquistadors led by Hernán Cortés. Cortés allied with city-states opposed to the Mexica, particularly the Nahuatl-speaking Tlaxcalteca, as well as other central Mexican polities, including Texcoco, its former ally in the Triple Alliance. After the fall of Tenochtitlan on 13th August 1521 and the capture of the emperor, Cuauhtémoc, the Spanish founded Mexico City on the ruins of Tenochtitlan. From there, they proceeded with the process of conquest and incorporation of Mesoamerican peoples into the Spanish Empire. With the destruction of the superstructure of the Aztec Empire in 1521, the Spanish used the city-states on which the Aztec Empire had been built to rule the indigenous populations via their local nobles. Those nobles pledged loyalty to the Spanish crown and converted, at least nominally, to Christianity, and in return were recognized as nobles by the Spanish crown. Nobles acted as intermediaries to convey taxes and mobilize labor for their new overlords, facilitating the establishment of Spanish colonial rule. Aztec culture and history are primarily known through archaeological evidence found in excavations, such as that of the renowned Templo Maya in Mexico City, from indigenous writings, from eyewitness accounts by Spanish conquistadors, such as Cortés and Bernal Díaz del Castillo, and especially from 16th and 17th century descriptions of Aztec culture and history written by Spanish clergymen and literate Aztecs in the Spanish or Nahuatl language, such as the famous illustrated bilingual, Spanish and Nahuatl, 12-volume Florentine Codex created by the Franciscan friar Bernardino de Sahagun in collaboration with indigenous Aztec informants. Important for knowledge of post-conquest Nahuas was the training of indigenous scribes to write alphabetic texts in Nahuatl, mainly for local purposes under Spanish colonial rule. At its height, Aztec culture had rich and complex philosophical, mythological, and religious traditions, as well as remarkable architectural and artistic accomplishments. The Aztec, having started to build their empire around the 14th century, found their civilization abruptly ended by the Spanish conquistadors. They lived in Mesoamerica and surrounding lands. Their capital city, Tenochtitlan, was one of the largest cities of all time. South America, pre-Columbian South America. By the first millennium, South America's vast rainforests, mountains, plains, and coasts were the home of millions of people. Estimates vary, but 30-50 million are often given, and 100 million by some estimates. Some groups formed permanent settlements. Among those groups were Chibcha-speaking peoples, Muisca or Muisca, Valdivia, Quimbaya, Calima, Marajoara culture, and the Tairona. The Muisca of Colombia, post-dating the Herrera period, Valdivia of Ecuador, the Quechuas, and the Aymara of Peru and Bolivia were the four most important sedentary Amerindian groups in South America. Since the 1970s, numerous geoglyphs have been discovered on deforested land in the Amazon rainforest, Brazil, supporting Spanish accounts of complex and ancient Amazonian civilizations such as Cujicugu. The Upano Valley sites in present-day eastern Ecuador predate all known complex Amazonian societies. The theory of pre-Columbian contact across the South Pacific Ocean between South America and Polynesia has received support from several lines of evidence, although solid confirmation remains elusive. A diffusion by human agents has been put forward to explain the pre-Columbian presence in Oceania of several cultivated plant species native to South America, such as the bottle gourd, Lagenaria siceraria, or sweet potato, Ipomoea batatas. Direct archaeological evidence for such pre-Columbian contacts and transport has not emerged. Similarities noted in the names of edible roots in Maori and Ecuadorian languages, Kumari, and Melanesian and Chilean, Gadu, have been inconclusive. A 2007 paper published in PNAS put forward DNA and archaeological evidence that domesticated chickens had been introduced into South America via Polynesia by late pre-Columbian times. These findings were challenged by a later study published in the same journal that cast doubt on the dating calibration used and presented alternative mtDNA analyses that disagreed with a Polynesian genetic origin. The origin and dating remain an open issue. Whether or not early Polynesian-American exchanges occurred, no compelling human genetic, archaeological, cultural, or linguistic legacy of such contact has turned up. In the history of the Americas, the pre-Columbian era, also known as the pre-contact era, or as the pre-Cabroline era specifically in Brazil, spans from the initial peopling of the Americas in the Upper Paleolithic to the onset of European colonization, which began with Christopher Columbus's voyage in 1492. This era encompasses the history of indigenous cultures prior to significant European influence, which in some cases did not occur until decades or even centuries after Columbus's arrival. During the pre-Columbian era, many civilizations developed permanent settlements, cities, agricultural practices, civic and monumental architecture, major earthworks, and complex societal hierarchies. Some of these civilizations had declined by the time of the establishment of the first permanent European colonies, around the late 16th to early 17th centuries, and are known primarily through archaeological research of the Americas and oral histories. Other civilizations, contemporaneous with the colonial period, were documented in European accounts of the time. For instance, the Maya civilization maintained written records, which were often destroyed by Christian Europeans, such as Diego de Landa, who viewed them as pagan but sought to preserve native histories. Despite the destruction, a few original documents have survived, and others were transcribed or translated into Spanish, providing modern historians with valuable insights into ancient cultures and knowledge. Valdivia culture. The Valdivia culture is one of the oldest settled cultures recorded in the Americas. It appeared 1,000 years after Las Vegas culture and thrived along the coast of Santa Elena Peninsula in Santa Elena province of Ecuador between 3500 BCE and 1500 BCE. Norte Chico Corral Supe, also known as Corral and Norte Chico, was a complex pre-Columbian era society that included as many as 30 major population centers in what is now the Corral region of north-central coastal Peru. The civilization flourished between the 4th and 2nd millennia BCE, with the formation of the first city generally dated to around 3500 BCE at Huaricanga in the Fortaleza area. From 3100 BCE onward, large-scale human settlement and communal construction became clearly apparent. This lasted until a period of decline around 1800 BCE. Since the early 21st century, it has been recognized as the oldest known civilization in the Americas, and as one of the 6 sites where civilization separately originated in the ancient world. This civilization flourished along 3 rivers, the Fortaleza, the Pativilca, and the Supe. These river valleys each have large clusters of sites. Farther south, there are several associated sites along the Huaura River. The name Corral Supe is derived from the city of Corral in the Supe Valley, a large and well-studied Corral Supe site. Complex society in the Corral Supe arose a millennium after Sumer in Mesopotamia, was contemporaneous with the Egyptian pyramids, and predated the Mesoamerican Olmecs by nearly 2 millennia. In archaeological nomenclature, Corral Supe is a pre-ceramic culture of the pre-Columbian late Archaic. It completely lacked ceramics, and no evidence of visual art has survived. The most impressive achievement of the civilization was its monumental architecture, including large earthwork platform mounds and sunken circular plazas. Archaeological evidence suggests use of textile technology and, possibly, the worship of common deity symbols, both of which recur in pre-Columbian Andean civilizations. Sophisticated government is presumed to have been required to manage the ancient corral. Questions remain over its organization, particularly the influence of food resources on politics. Archaeologists have been aware of ancient sites in the area since at least the 1940s. Early work occurred at Aspero on the coast, a site identified as early as 1905, and later at Corral, farther inland. In the late 1990s, Peruvian archaeologists, led by Ruth Shady, provided the first extensive documentation of the civilization with work at Corral. A 2001 paper in Science, providing a survey of the Corral research, and a 2004 article in Nature, describing fieldwork and radiocarbon dating across a wider area, revealed Corral Supe's full significance, and led to widespread interest. One of the oldest known civilizations of the Americas was established in the Norte Chico region of modern Peru. Complex society emerged in the group of coastal valleys between 3000 and 1800 BCE. The quipu, a distinctive recording device among Andean civilizations, apparently dates from the era of Norte Chico's prominence. Chavin, the Chavin culture, was a pre-Columbian civilization, developed in the northern Andean highlands of Peru around 900 BCE, ending around 250 BCE. It extended its influence to other civilizations along the Peruvian coast. The Chavin people were located in the Mosna Valley, where the Mosna and Huachexa rivers merge. The best-known archaeological site for the Chavin culture is Chavin de Huantar, located in the Andean highlands of the present-day Ancash region. Although Chavin de Huantar may or may not have been the center or birthplace of the Chavin culture, it was of great importance and has been designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The Chavin established a trade network and developed agriculture by as early as, or late compared to the Old World, 900 BCE, according to some estimates and archaeological finds. Artifacts were found at a site called Chavin in modern Peru at an elevation of 377 meters. Chavin civilization spanned from 900 BCE to 300 BCE. Upano Valley. The Upano Valley sites are a cluster of archaeological sites in the Amazon rainforest. They are located in the Upano River Valley in Morona, Santiago province in eastern Ecuador. The sites comprise several cities. They are believed to have been inhabited as early as 500 BC, predating any other known complex Amazonian society by over a millennium. Inca Empire. The Inca Empire, officially known as the Realm of the Four Parts, Quechua Tawantinsuyu, lit. Land of Four Parts, was the largest empire in pre-Columbian America. The administrative, political, and military center of the empire was in the city of Cusco. The Inca civilization rose from the Peruvian highlands sometime in the early 13th century. The Portuguese explorer Aleixo Garcia was the first European to reach the Inca Empire in 1524. Later, in 1532, the Spanish began the conquest of the Inca Empire, and by 1572, the last Inca state was fully conquered. From 1438 to 1533, the Incas incorporated a large portion of western South America, centered on the Andean mountains, using conquest and peaceful assimilation, among other methods. At its largest, the empire joined modern-day Peru with what are now western Ecuador, western and south-central Bolivia, northwest Argentina, the southwesternmost tip of Colombia, and a large portion of modern-day Chile, forming a state comparable to the historical empires of Eurasia. Its official language was Quechua. The Inca Empire was unique in that it lacked many of the features associated with civilization in the Old World. Anthropologist Gordon McEwen wrote that the Incas were able to construct one of the greatest imperial states in human history, without the use of the wheel, draft animals, knowledge of iron or steel, or even a system of writing. Notable features of the Inca Empire included its monumental architecture, especially stonework, extensive road network, kapakñan, reaching all corners of the empire, finely woven textiles, use of knotted strings, quipu or kipu, for record-keeping, and communication, agricultural innovations and production in a difficult environment, and the organization and management fostered or imposed on its people and their labor. The Inca Empire functioned largely without money and without markets. Instead, exchange of goods and services was based on reciprocity between individuals and among individuals, groups, and Inca rulers. Taxes consisted of a labor obligation of a person to the empire. The Inca rulers, who theoretically owned all the means of production, reciprocated by granting access to land and goods and providing food and drink in celebratory feasts for their subjects. Many local forms of worship persisted in the empire, most of them concerning local sacred huacas or wakwai. But the Inca leadership encouraged the sun worshipper of Inti, their sun god, and imposed its sovereignty above other religious groups, such as that of Pachamama. The Incas considered their king, the Sapa Inca, to be the son of the sun. The Inca economy, especially in the past, was often the subject of scholarly debate. Darrell E. Lalone, in his work, The Inca as a Non-Market Economy, noted that scholars have previously described it as feudal slave or socialist, as well as a system based on reciprocity and redistribution, a system with markets and commerce, or an Asiatic mode of production. Holding their capital at the great city of Cusco, the Inca civilization dominated the Andes region from 1438 to 1533. Known as Tawantinsuyu, or the Land of the Four Regions, in Quechua, the Inca culture was highly distinct and developed. Cities were built with precise, unmatched stonework, constructed over many levels of mountain terrain. Terrace farming was a useful form of agriculture. There is evidence of excellent metalwork and even successful trepanation of the skull in Inca civilization. European colonization. European colonization of the Americas. During the Age of Discovery, a large-scale colonization of the Americas, involving a number of European countries, took place primarily between the late 15th century and the early 19th century. The Norse explored and colonized areas of Europe and the North Atlantic, colonizing Greenland and creating a short-term settlement near the northern tip of Newfoundland circa 1000 AD. However, due to its long duration and importance, the later colonization by the European powers involving the continents of North America and South America is more well known. During this time, the European empires of Spain, Portugal, Great Britain, France, Russia, the Netherlands, Denmark, and Sweden began to explore and claim the Americas, its natural resources, and human capital, leading to the displacement, disestablishment, enslavement, and even genocide of the indigenous peoples in the Americas, and the establishment of several settler colonial states. The rapid rate at which some European nations grew in wealth and power was unforeseeable in the early 15th century, because it had been preoccupied with internal wars, and it was slowly recovering from the loss of population caused by the Black Death. The Ottoman Empire's domination of trade routes to Asia prompted Western European monarchs to search for alternatives, resulting in the voyages of Christopher Columbus and his accidental arrival at the New World. With the signing of the Treaty of Tordesillas in 1494, Portugal and Spain agreed to divide the earth in two, with Portugal having dominion over non-Christian lands in the world, the eastern half, and Spain over those in the western half. Spanish claims essentially included all of the Americas. However, the Treaty of Tordesillas granted the eastern tip of South America to Portugal, where it established Brazil in the early 1500s, and the East Indies to Spain, where it established the Philippines. The city of Santo Domingo, in the current-day Dominican Republic, founded in 1496 by Columbus, is credited as the oldest continuously inhabited European established settlement in the Americas. By the 1530s, other Western European powers realized They too could benefit from voyages to the Americas, leading to British and French colonializations in the northeast tip of the Americas, including in the present-day United States. Within a century, the Swedish established New Sweden, the Dutch established New Netherland, and Denmark-Norway, along with the Swedish and Dutch, established colonization of parts of the Caribbean. By the 1700s, Denmark-Norway revived its former colonies in Greenland, and Russia began to explore and claim the Pacific coast from Alaska to California. Russia began colonizing the Pacific Northwest in the mid-18th century, seeking pelts for the fur trade. Many of the social structures, including religions, political boundaries, and linguae francae, which predominate in the Western Hemisphere in the 21st century, are the descendants of those that were established during this period. Violent conflicts arose during the beginning of this period as indigenous peoples fought to preserve their territorial integrity from increasing European colonizers and from hostile indigenous neighbors who were equipped with Eurasian technology. Conflict between the various European empires and the indigenous peoples was a leading dynamic in the Americas into the 1800s. Although some parts of the continent gained their independence from Europe, by then countries such as the United States continued to fight against Native Americans and practiced settler colonialism. Colonial period. The United States, for example, practiced a settler colonial policy of manifest destiny and the Trail of Tears. Other regions, including California, Patagonia, the Northwestern Territory, and the Northern Great Plains, experienced little to no colonization at all until the 1800s. European contact and colonization had disastrous effects on the indigenous peoples of the Americas and their societies. Around 1000, the Vikings established a short-lived settlement in Newfoundland, now known as L'Anse aux Meadows. Speculations exist about other Old World discoveries of the New World, but none of these are generally or completely accepted by most scholars. Spain sponsored a major exploration led by Italian explorer Christopher Columbus in 1492. It quickly led to extensive European colonization of the Americas. The Europeans brought Old World diseases, which are thought to have caused catastrophic epidemics, and a huge decrease of the native population. Columbus came at a time in which many technical developments in sailing techniques and communication made it possible to report his voyages easily and to spread word of them throughout Europe. It was also a time of growing religious, imperial, and economic rivalries that led to a competition for the establishment of colonies.